He never signed a piece of legislation, nor did he lead troops into battle. But boy, could he get his way! Godzilla! TNT honors one of our own special heroes during an all-day President's Day celebration of Godzilla movies and tunes.
Alright, and we are back. Last time we went through Giant Monster number 41 up to 16. This is why my girlfriend left me. Here's the cream of the crop, the best of the best, in my opinion. And if you haven't seen part 1, click the fancy eyeball in the corner up there and watch me rationalize why GHIDORAH is somehow better than Gorosaurus. We're starting up with one of the big 5. Rodney.
Hey, I'm Rodney. I'm a vegan. My favorite bands are Tool and Radiohead. I work at The Onion, writing articles on organized religion. I gotta go take my girl to this Hormone Pilots concert, so I'll see you later.
Rodan is just as classic as Godzilla is, debuting in his own film in 1956, the first Toho monster film to be in color, and just like Godzilla, Rodan is an exaggerated version of a prehistoric creature. A pterodon with some of the strongest flight powers you'll ever see. He can level entire cities just by flapping his wings. While his standard incarnations don't have beam effects, he is still a very capable monster and can get up close and personal. In the 90s version known as Fire Rodan, has a fire beam effect. As per the name, Fire Rodan. Rodan's origin always dealt with him living in a volcano, so giving him a fire beam always made sense. It lets him directly compete with Godzilla. However, just like Anguirus and Godzilla, he's got some name issues. Sometimes he goes by Radon, since, you know, it's an actual word, but you can't copyright Radon, so you're left with Rodan. And it looks like next up we're left with Orga, the alien monster from Godzilla 2000. I'll mention how he was loosely designed off of Zilla, but you wouldn't really get to that conclusion on your own. I never really noticed that until someone told me, and yeah, it makes sense. But his connection to Godzilla doesn't end there. See, Orga began as a spaceship that was hibernating at the bottom of the sea for millenniums, and was rudely woken up in this film and decided to get that bread. The spaceship itself then managed to get a hold of some Godzilla DNA and mutated into the form known as Orga. It's primarily a grappler, able to suplex his opponents and throw them far away. He's got some ham hands that'll make even me blush. And like many monsters in the G Pantheon, he has a beam weapon. Although instead of firing it from his mouth, it's a handy dandy shoulder cannon, just like in Predator. Of course, I can't talk about Orga without mentioning his DNA powers. I already said how he absorbs some Godzilla DNA to alter his form, and after getting tossed around a bit, he decides he's had enough and tries to eat Godzilla whole. He even manages to develop spines during this. Imagine if Orga actually managed to get spikes from Anguirus or Gigan's chainsaws. It's like the Trilopods in Godzilla Rulers of Earth. The monsters take on the forms of other monsters. Of course, this plan backfires horribly. Literally. Orga, you dolt. And for number 13, we move on to the coolest looking mecha in the series, but also the one who I have the least to say about. He's all style, but hey, that's what these movies do best, and I know some of you out there love this guy. MECHA-KING GHIDORAH is a cyborg version of Ghidorah. After getting his head blown off by Godzilla, they take his corpse and outfit him into an anti-Godzilla weapon, just like MECHAGODZILLA 2 later on. In fact, MECHA-GHIDORAH parts are even used to build MECHAGODZILLA 2 later on. We go from MECHA-GHIDORAH's head to MECHAGODZILLA to Mogira. Diminishing returns are my favorite. Not much to say here, MECHA-KING GHIDORAH is just cool. Speaking of MECHAGODZILLAs, we have the original MECHAGODZILLA from 1974 coming in at number 12. The only outright evil MECHAGODZILLA, he first acted as a blatant doppelganger of Godzilla himself, trying to frame him for all the destruction he caused. Remember, by 1974, Godzilla was firmly placed in the superhero position, so seeing Big G destroying buildings for no reason by this time raised eyebrows. He may not be a 1-1 idea of what a robot Godzilla would be, but since he started off as a skeleton wearing a Godzilla suit, it made sense. And the main reason for this guy being so high up here is Jesus Christ! Remember when you were in 4th grade drawing robots on the back of your spelling test and every appendage was a different weapon? That's MECHAGODZILLA. He is armed to the teeth and practically annihilates everyone. He makes Godzilla bleed like a motherfucker. He takes on 2 monsters at once and still leads most of the fight. Absolute madman. Though he loses points for getting beaten up by Deus Ex Machina. How did he do that?
What?
Water, fire, air, and dirt. Fucking magnets, how do they work?
He does get to pull the ultimate jabait on Godzilla in the sequel, though. He was made for the 20th anniversary of the franchise, and for an anniversary SmackDown, this monster delivered the goods. Look, I couldn't not put him this high. Jet Jaguar is everything dumb that we love about this series. Designed by a child as part of a contest held by Toho, Jet Jaguar was made to capitalize on the Ultraman craze at the time. He's an orange robot, he moves like Mr. Roboto, has antennas that come out of the side of his head when he flies, and oh yeah, he can fly. He talks in moon speak and, okay, get this. He programmed himself to be able to change size.
What the fuck? Excuse me?
Yeah, that checks out. Jet is an absolute unit. You look at him and you smile. He has his own theme song for crying out loud. You can't deny it, we all love the Jag.
When Nitrax returns, Paul Carrick shows us what took him top 10.
Then NXS are gonna jam with Devil Inside after this.
And he now returns to the king of the cartoon monsters, Godzilla.
Hey Jim, we need a name for this new monster. He's like an evil version of Godzilla from space. What do we call it? Genius! Okay, absolutely stupid name aside, Space Godzilla is pretty damn cool. He tends to fight at a distance with the standard beam attacks, but those old tricks aren't enough for him. He has the ability to create crystals that sprout out of the ground, which he can then use to amplify his power. With enough time, he can create an entire fortress out of these crystals. They even use this as the basis for the plot for Godzilla Unleashed. But they didn't stop there. They gave this dude telekinesis. He can use this to fly and even pick up his own crystals and use them as projectiles, and obviously, yeah, he can pick up other monsters too. Space Godzilla is the real deal. But let's address the elephant in the room. Space Godzilla. Space Godzilla. How? Well, it has to deal with Godzilla cells that just happened to be on Mothra while she was on her space cruise to stop a meteor. Long story. That fell off while she was in space and got sucked into a black hole. The Godzilla DNA then mutated over a couple of years and turned into Space Godzilla. Did you like that explanation? Good, because the film liked it so much that they made up a second explanation just because the first one wasn't good enough. This time the cells came from BIOLLANTE while she was flying around in her spore form. I guess realistically, yeah, there would be multiple theories as to how something like this would happen if not everyone's on the same page in real life. But from a filmmaking standpoint where we are directly shown that the Mothra theory is correct, why would you do that? It adds nothing. But you know what does add something? Space Godzilla, he's cool. MECHAGODZILLA 3, also known as, hey, remember when Godzilla died in 1954 and was completely disintegrated? What if he didn't disintegrate? Well, it looks like somebody at Toho was listening to too much Andrew Gold because for some reason they had a bright idea to take the bones of the original 1954 Godzilla, which should still be here, and use that as the base to build a MECHAGODZILLA. Okay, question. Why did they need the skeleton? It's a robot. You can just build a robot skeleton. You didn't need to be a Godzilla skeleton. This is only there for plot purposes, where the Godzilla DNA in his bones is still somehow alive and takes over Kiryu and has him go berserk. See what I said a while ago about Godzilla DNA? This never ends. They even put a Godzilla DNA stinger in the post-credits Tokyo SOS, which means nothing and goes nowhere. But I digress. We got Kiryu here, and he's probably the best of the MECHAGODZILLAs. He has some of the best abilities like the absolute zero cannon, the best mobility. He caused permanent damage to Godzilla. Look at that scar. He also probably looks the most like Godzilla himself. He's a modern MECHAGODZILLA. He has great weapons and a cool dragon-esque design. He also appears in the Ready Player One novel, if that means anything to ya. Coming in at number 8, we have a monster that almost killed the franchise.
Oh hi, thanks for checking in. I'm still a piece of garbage.
GHIDORAH, the smog monster. The first true multi-form monster in this series, Mothra doesn't count. He begins in a small tadpole form until he festers and grows into a crawling form, a landing form, and his final upright form. He also has an extra flying form for added mobility. GHIDORAH, despite appearing in the weirdest movie in the franchise, could easily pass for a horror monster. Think about it, he comes from pollution and can poison anyone by flying over them. He's the first monster to visibly cause human gore. With some tweaking, he can give people hallucinations, drown them in sewage, seep into any room like the Blob, separate into multiples. He can be a menace. But fantasizing aside, GHIDORAH in its current state is still really cool. His design is one of the most unique designs in the series without being too overly goofy. And this bastard here is tough. He's made of sewage and pollution, so to really damage him, you have to dig deep in him and attack his organs directly. And being made of sludge, he can use his own body as a weapon. He basically just throws lumps of himself at Godzilla. And you know he has to smell horribly, so he attacks you even if you're a bystander. This is the monster that works the best as a vinyl figure. Crazy colors just work with him since he already had that going for him. Well, that took a while. We're finally at the queen of the monsters, Mothra. I mean, she had to make the top 10, just like how these three had to make the top 5. It's like a law or something. Mothra is a goddess, the symbol of peace, protector of humanity, always the heroine. She is actively worshipped by a tribe of people for most of her run. She is one of only 3 monsters to actually beat Godzilla. And while the larval stage may seem lame since it's just a caterpillar, most of the time she beats Godzilla, it's in that form. That silk is the strongest substance in the universe and it will bring forth world peace, I swear to God. I don't really know what to say, it's Mothra, everyone loves her. Hey, remember Godzilla's DNA? Because this is the movie where Godzilla DNA became a constant plot point. Once upon a time, in the far-off era of 1985, a couple scientists grabbed a slab of Godzilla cells and began to experiment on them. But then, tragedy struck, as the daughter of one of the scientists was killed off in a case of espionage. So the loving father did what any sane man of science would do.
Arrange her funeral to honor her life?
No, silly! Combine her DNA with that of a rose in a giant monster! I mean, what else are you gonna do? So BIOLLANTE is half rose and half Godzilla, enchanted with the spirit of insert name here. This is one of the most interesting monsters in the entire series. Her origins come from another script writing contest Toho held, with 2 scripts being turned into films, one being this and the other being Gunhead. She begins in a rose form and it does look pretty darn creepy. When she enters the true form and takes on a Godzilla-like appearance, that's when it gets serious. It took over 30 technicians to make this thing move. This is a practical effect that could put Hollywood to shame. She has the ability to turn into spores and warp around the world. A spore and beam weapon, as is standard of course, and her main feature are her vines. Taking a page out of Audrey 2's book, each vine ends in a mouth that can chomp down on their foes. Her main weakness being that her mobility isn't that great considering her plant-like body and just her sheer size. She towers over Godzilla in this film. Specifically this film because in the next movie he grows 20 meters taller to an even 100, so that version of Godzilla would be even taller than BIOLLANTE, but semantics. I hope we get to see more of BIOLLANTE one day. She's too good of a monster to go to waste. Top 5, everybody, and you know, nothing says number 5 to me than the number 3. King Ghidorah, Godzilla's arch nemesis, the 3-headed monster. He's capable of destroying entire planets. His roars are almost as iconic as Godzilla's. Whenever you see a parody of Godzilla, you're pretty likely to find some sort of 3-headed dragon in the vicinity. He is iconic. The first truly evil being in the Godzilla series. The new movie is even hyping him up as an extinction-level event. He's going to be terrifying and I can't wait. His primary weapons are the gravity beams, green bolts of lightning that can level buildings. He lacks arms, but with 3 heads he can make do using them to strangle and tear into his opponents. And obviously he's a wyvern, he can fly. He always gives the Big G a run for his money, giving him plenty of close calls throughout the series' 60-plus year run. But you know, with 3 heads, it makes me wonder, is each head a different person? Like, are they conjoined triplets? I wonder what kind of conversations they have.
I'll be Tracer.
I'm already Tracer.
What about Widowmaker?
I'm already Widowmaker.
I'll be Bastion.
The OG himself, the one true king. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, please welcome King Kong, a true icon of cinema. I don't think I need to explain his legacy or impact on film. He's the original giant monster. Special effects as we know them today would not exist without him. Godzilla would not exist. The big ape deserves to be in the top 5 on that merit alone. And don't fret, Kong is king even without that legacy. Sure, he doesn't have the durability like others, but he can still clown most of these monsters in a fight. Remember, he was the first monster to canonically defeat Godzilla in a fight. Similarly to Mothra, Kong is often depicted as a god amongst humans, and is worshipped for this. He has some downright brutal kills, making sure his opponents stay down. For some reason, a lot of Godzilla fans give him a bad rep, and I don't get that. Kong is an all-star. Plain and simple. He commands respect. Hail the king, baby.
Life. Dreams. Hope. Where do they come from? And where do they go?
None of that junk is enough to fulfill your hearts. Destruction! Destruction is what makes life worth living! Destroy, destroy, destroy! Let's destroy everything!
Born from the aftermath of the Oxygen Destroyer, the only weapon capable of killing Godzilla, Destroyer is the most dangerous and lethal monster in Godzilla history. Look at him. This thing is horrifying. After evolving over the course of 40 years, they finally take a human-sized crab form, swarming Tokyo and basically turning the movie into an Alien sequel for about 10 minutes. The Destroyer crabs can join together to take on larger forms, such as a Hedorah-esque flying stage, before finally becoming the Devil, reaching his final form. Remember how SpaceGodzilla kidnapped Godzilla's son? Destroyer takes it a step further and outright kills him. Ability-wise, he's got wings he can fly with without having to backtrack to his previous form. He's got a micro-oxygen beam, not radioactive, micro-oxygen, the stuff that killed the original Godzilla, and could potentially cause worse damage to the world than the atomic bomb. He has an energy storage technique, horns, spikes, a spiked tail, and the same way the smaller destroyers can join together in one big form, they can also separate back into the smaller forms, potentially allowing for some double-team action. He suffers from the Rodan syndrome, where the name they wanted was a regular word so they couldn't trademark it, so they needed to exaggerate the word so they could sell toys of it. Destroyer became Destroyer, which I do prefer. Destroyer just sounds too generic, while Destroyer sounds both goofy and badass at the same time, and tells you everything you need to know about him. Lastly, he's the only monster besides Kong that Godzilla didn't beat, or at least fight to a draw. Let that speak for itself. I mean, come on. Of course Godzilla was gonna be near the top of the list. It's his own damn franchise. I don't have to justify why he's this high up. His title is King of the Monsters for a reason. I mean, the real reason was localization, but I think he's lived up to that title. Let me put it this way. Godzilla has a win-loss record of over 43 to 7 with 9 ties. He won the MTV Lifetime Achievement Award in 1996 and has a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's a household name. Even if you've never watched a Godzilla film before, you know who he is. Over 30 films, he's been in cartoons, anime, commercials, educational shorts, theme park attractions, a boatload of merchandise, video games, comic books, music. He met Charles Barkley. The atomic breath is an iconic weapon. His roar has been heard around the world. Everyone knows him. Do I need to go on? You've heard about what he's had to do throughout the past 2 videos now. You know why he's here. There's only one thing left to say.
Long live the king.
The video in which you are about to see is an account of the tragedy which befell a group of 4 monsters, in particular Mothra and her temperamental companion Godzilla, as well as the world at large. It is all the more tragic in that they were on a winning streak against the Zillions, but had they lived very, very long lives, they could not have expected, nor would they have wished to see as much of the mad and macabre as they were to see that day. For them, an idyllic summer afternoon rampage became a nightmare. The events of that day would lead to the discovery of one of the most bizarre crimes in the annals of Japanese history, an event which would be forever known as the Nebula M Chainsaw Massacre.
My favorite kaiju in the entire series is none other than the legendary space chicken himself, Gigan. This guy was always destined to be my favorite monster. It's the same principle as MECHAGODZILLA 74. Everything on this guy is a weapon. Let's start with the obvious. His arms end in giant hooks he can use to stab, slice, and dice his enemies with. In Godzilla Final Wars, this gets upgraded into straight up knives, which are then upgraded further into forked chainsaws. That alone makes him the most dangerous melee fighter in the series. Oh, but it doesn't end there. Those knives in Final Wars also have built-in hook shots. He can hook you up and drag you right into his second identifying feature, the big old bust on his gut. Oh yeah, fun fact, Gigan has the distinction of being the first monster in the series to cause another monster to visibly bleed. Gigan has a reputation of being somewhat of a sadist. If Freddy Krueger was a giant monster, he'd probably be something like Gigan. Of course, that's not all. Being a space monster, Gigan has the ability to fly, as one does, probably via the giant fins on his back, and while it's never used in the Showa films, he can fire a beam through his visor according to various official media sources. His main weakness being that he is a bit of a glass cannon. He can deal out the pain, but he can't take it. At least he does have the sense to leave when the battle's not going well. Smart kid. Everything about Gigan is just radiating cool. He's so cool that there's even a melodic death metal band named after him. Life is strange. And with that, you now know my own personal ranking of every major monster featured in the Godzilla series. Where do you rank them? Is Gigan your favorite too, or do you prefer another? Let me know in the comments and leave a like if you enjoyed the video, and maybe hit that subscribe button if you want to see more content from me in the future. Be sure to check out the description for social media links and more. I'll see you guys later. Loot Crate, NatureBox, Audible.com.